Good morning. Welcome to the April meeting of Republican Women United. April is our annual legislative update, and even though we've had to change the format, I wanted to stay with the same program design that we have. Our regularly scheduled programs will continue. We do hope to have our program in May live again. I don't think we'll be ready to do the group meetings yet, but we will meet again in May. To all of our regular members and associates, I want to tell you that I miss seeing you so very much. Thank you for the emails, the text, and the phone calls. I like staying in touch that way. For those that are joining us for the first time, if you would just take a few minutes during this meeting and think about joining us. If you're new to RWU, I want you to know that our purpose, what we strive to accomplish, is to recruit, educate, and deploy Republicans so that we can elect Republicans to office. RWU is affiliated with the Kansas Federation of Republican Women, and throughout Kansas, we have over 20 clubs. So if you can hear my voice, you're watching on our Facebook page, we can find a club near you. We are also affiliated with the National Federation of Republican Women. Across the United States, we have over 60,000 members. So we have a broad reach. Our goal is to make sure that we are educating Republicans so that they can help reinforce and follow the Republican principles. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at republicanwomenunited@cox.net, or you can go to the national web page, which is nfrw.org. I want to begin this meeting, like we do all of our meetings, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you there at home would join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You would just bow your heads for a prayer. Our dear most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to meet in this free country. We ask that you give your blessings to all of those who are serving in public office. Lord, I just ask that they would beseech you for your guidance in all the decisions that they make. Put a special protection over those in Washington, Lord, that are leading us. We ask that you walk with each and every one of us, Lord, as we are dealing with this pandemic, that we would have assurance that you are in control. We ask this all in your Son's name. Amen. Amen. All right, this morning I want to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank our legislators who have taken the time out of their busy schedule to come here today. We have so very many things that are going on. We all are distracted and have a lot on our minds. So I thank all of you. I also want to thank Barb Paulus, our KFRW president. I can tell you that she leads by example. If it weren't for Barb's encouragement, for her leadership, I would not be here in the position that I'm in. So Barb, I want to thank you so very much. I also want to thank the Republican Women United board. The board has been so helpful to me during all of these changes and things that we've had to deal with in the last few weeks. I especially want to thank Laura Adkins, who has taken untold number of phone calls and texts from me asking those questions. Laura is our second vice president and is in charge of our campaigns and our social media. So Laura, I want to thank you too. This morning, our program changed somewhat. Senator Wagle had to step away from the meeting because of the Supreme Court case that is going on right now. And I do appreciate so very much everybody making adjustments in their speaking parts and sharing some of that. So with no further ado, I want to introduce Representative Leo Delperdang, and he is going to talk to us about those things that have to do with the committees that he sits on. And I think one of those is energy. Isn't that correct, Leo?
Yes, it is. Thank you, everyone, for having us here today. It's been an interesting week so far, I will guarantee you. I'm Representative Delperdang from the west side of Wichita. Sit on various committees up there. One of them is energy, utilities, and telecommunications. But before we get into that, I just wanted to give you a little update for this morning. We've been kind of all sidetracked listening to the Supreme Court arguments concerning House Resolution 5025 going on this morning. So what is 5025? I've got just a couple of items here I wanted to read just so everybody's aware of what that is. But House Resolution 5025, it's described in Kansas Statutes 48-924B, subsection 3, and it gets upon specific application by the governor to the State Finance Council. Keep that one in mind. State Finance Council. They can authorize an extension of such of the state emergency disasters that we are currently under right now by an affirmative vote of the legislative members for a period of 30 days. That's 30 days only. So this comes into play with the once we get into following the State Finance Council, the Legislative Coordinating Council, or LCC, as you may be hearing bunches of information on, represents the legislature when our legislature is not in session, and that is pursuant to Kansas Statute 46-1202. And we authorize to ratify a declaration to terminate a state of disaster emergency. I'm sorry, not we. The LCC is authorized to terminate a state of disaster emergency, revoke an order or proclamation, or assume the power granted to the legislature pursuant to the emergency declaration I mentioned earlier, 48-924 or 925. The LCC can also authorize additional extensions to the state of disaster emergency by a majority vote of 5 to, there's 7 people on the council, so it takes a majority vote of 5 to 2 minimum to pass it. But the LCC can pass this extension by a period of 30 days at a time. So that's just kind of a high level of what the LCC is doing. But right now we've got the Supreme Court arguing on the validity of the LCC rather than really looking at the constitutionality of the executive order itself. So it's kind of going off on a little bit of an interesting twist. I don't have a lot of details for you at this point, and I'm thinking we're going to be able to maybe follow up with quite a bit more information before we're out of here today. In the meantime, I mentioned I sit on the Utilities and Energy Committee. This last year, we've had a couple of executive orders that came up the line. One of them was Executive Order 46, and it aimed to establish the Kansas Energy Office as an independent entity. That would be effective July 1st, 2020, rather than continue it with where it's at now under the Kansas Corporation Commission. The ERO stated the Energy Office will be under the direction of a director, be a new director appointed by the governor of the Kansas Energy Office. The ERO is where it, when you read into it, it sounded pretty forthright and decent on the surface, but when you read into it, it was more about balancing the transfers of balances of funds and accounts appropriated to the Kansas Corporation Commission for activities to the Energy Office. So it was really focused more on the money transfers. When you read into it about the people, the office, etc., there was very little into it. It just talked about how there'd be a new director reporting directly to the governor, and the funds that are in this right now under the Kansas Corporation Commission would all be transferred over. The ERO stated the commission's powers, duties, records, property, rules, regulations, and functions related to the commission's energy office would be transferred and conferred and imposed upon the Kansas Energy Office. The Energy Office shall be the successor to the powers, the duties, and the functions of the commission concerning anything with energy. The Executive Reorganization Order 46 was introduced to the Utilities and Energy Committee on February 11th of 2020 and was subsequently passed to the Committee of a Whole to stand for final debate. So I don't know if there's any questions coming in on this at this point in time, but I was the one that actually carried House Resolution 6031, which basically stopped this move from happening. So it shut down the move. It kept the Energy Office where it is today under the Kansas Corporation Commission. And the biggest thing was it kept the money under the Kansas Corporation Commission versus putting it directly under the power and direction of the governor, which, as we see how recently things are going a little bit unchecked, and we're just trying to make sure there are checks and balances as we move forward. So,
one of the questions that we have is, what do you think the impact of some of these are going to be on the citizens in Kansas?
As far as the Energy Office?
Yes.
On one side, you can argue that, gee, we need a standalone Energy Office to look at checks and balances specific to electric rates, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, I could argue we already have that office in place, and it is under the Kansas Corporation Commission that deals with more than just utilities, but into oil, pipelines, anything corporate related throughout Kansas. So it's a little bit more of a check and balance setup as it is today versus having a direct report directly to the governor, with the governor being able to stipulate how you spend all these millions of dollars. And I'm talking multiple millions of dollars that would have transferred.
We have several people asking, is there any way that you can get our rates lowered? And will any of this pandemic help? Will they be coming up with something that is going to reduce our rates?
I don't know concerning the pandemic. There are several of us that are working on the rate issues right now. One of the things that really intrigues me is what's known as wheeling, I believe is the term for it. If you go down to Texas, there are multiple power companies offering services, thus the power of the market and competition. If you're thinking, how can we possibly do something like this? Think of back, if for those that are old enough, 1984, Judge Green broke up what was known as the Bell system. It used to be a world-class, world-size monopoly. They provided telecom, period, end of subject. That broke up. How did we do it there? We've still got our AT&Ts and the running on Southwestern Bell facilities, et cetera, but you've got it opened up to competition. Look what your rates have done. I remember I used to pay 25 to 50 cents per minute for a long distance call. Today, there really isn't even such a thing as a long distance call. It's all changed, and that is not because of the technology so much as it was the competition that changed it. So competition, I think, is always good for the markets. I could possibly see it running into the electric markets too. Yes, they all have their cabling infrastructure, but you've got other companies that could possibly play into that and use that infrastructure. So with that, I don't know if you have any more questions.
I don't have any more questions right now. What we want to do, thank you so much, Leo. We appreciate you coming in.
All right,
and
thank you for having me here.
Keeping this social distancing thing here.
Yes.
We want to continue the meeting with Representative Susan Humpries. She has a lot of information available for us. I know that many of you are sending your notices in to me and saying what's going on with the Supreme Court case. We do have that information coming a little bit later in the program, so just hold on. Don't forget also that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. So thank you for joining us in our first ever live Republican Women United meeting. We appreciate you. And now we have Representative Susan Humpries.
Thank you, Elta. Thank you all for being here and joining in this new normal that we have. I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking about some things that I personally have been involved with over this session for this legislative update. The first thing I want to touch on is I get a lot of emails asking what's happening with the Value Them Both Amendment. As you all remember, that's a response to the Supreme Court decision, the Kansas Supreme Court last April, and it's amending our Bill of Rights to reserve to the people the right to regulate abortion through their elected state representatives and senators, not the court regulating abortion. So we had a joint hearing in the House and in the Senate. It was passed out of both Federal and State Affairs Committee, House and Senate. The Senate took up their version and they passed it 28-12. They needed 27, 2/3. The House took it up and we needed 84 votes. Interestingly, there are 84 Republicans in the House, but sadly we failed with only 80 votes. I failed with only 80 votes. So we did not pass that. And some of you have said, what is the future of the values in both? It was the number one priority of our House leadership and the Senate leadership. To come back, we would have to come back this session, which I'll touch on at the end of my little presentation. But we would have to take up the House version. Senate version is gone. It failed. We would have to take up the House version, which complicates things, has to go back to the Senate. But we're not giving up on that. That is still the number one priority. We're not giving up on it. The next thing I want to talk about is the Executive Reorganization Order number 44 that the governor put out before us at the end of January. And it was reorganizing DCF, the Department of Children and Family, and the Department of Aging and Disabilities, and taking some of the juvenile services from the Department of Corrections and making it into a humongous program, a humongous department. It would have been called the Kansas Department of Human Services. No efficiencies were explained to us why this was a good idea. There seemed to be no upside, no benefits, just the ability for one secretary to control so many of those human services. The House voted it down, mostly along the lines, mostly on party lines. Happy to change some things in DCF, but this was not the right avenue to do that. Are there questions or should I go on? Okay, I'm going to continue on with my next thing. This is a little bit Civics 101. As you all probably know, bills have to pass through both chambers. Starts in one, goes to the other, and then the governor signs it. But because our session was cut short because of COVID-19, we felt like we had to get out of there. And by the way, I just want to say how thankful we are. No legislators, no staff, no one working in the Capitol so far that we know of have contacted COVID-19, which is amazing because up until the last day, we were shaking hands and not really practicing social distancing yet because we were a little bit just in our own world. But it was cut short, and there were many bills that were left hanging that didn't make it across the dome to the other chamber. And as a vice chairman of Children and Seniors, one of those bills that I just want to mention to you, it was forming a child welfare oversight committee. It would have been a group of objective oversight that would have gotten together to see how are we doing taking care of the children in our state. And also seniors. This was child welfare, sorry. And it would have been an avenue for people to come and say, hey, this isn't working. I found this in foster care. I've had this happen. I'm trying to adopt. It would be an avenue for people to air their grievances. That has worked well with some of the other programs in the state, to have a legislative oversight committee with a certain number of legislators. We need that now. And why do we need it? Because in this season of COVID-19, I'm asking you, how much have you heard from the Department of Children and Families? At press conferences, you hear from the Secretary of Commerce, you hear from the Secretary of Labor, you hear from Secretary of Health and Human Services, but we've heard nothing from the Secretary of the Department of Children and Services. There are states that consider their child welfare workers as important as their first responders. We don't really know what's going on with foster care children, what's going on in homes, with schools being out. We're concerned that there's things going on that we have no idea about because there's no adult eyes on children. often as there are unusual. So that's why I would say this oversight committee is so important. We needed it. We needed it before this happened. So how might that happen? Well, we would have to go back in session for that to happen, for us to reconsider that. And it might be worthy to go back in session. We are scheduled to go back on April 27th. I think most people think that's not really going to happen on April 27th, but it could happen a little bit later if it happens at all. So such bills as the Child Welfare Oversight Committee might be considered. Value them both might be considered again. Maybe Convention of States might be considered. But there's also the downside of going back, and that might be in the state of this economy, folks are afraid of implementing a tax increase immediately, or we're expanding Medicaid. So it could go both ways on that. For now, I know we need to get our economy back on track. We need to press on. We need to continue with what we're doing. And I'm happy to answer questions at this point, if there are any.
We have several foster parents who have texted in, and they want to know, is any of this going to have any impact on them receiving care, the medical care, their children? Can they still take them for their regularly scheduled non-emergency visits? One has a child that needs to go to have her hearing checked. She's got some issues, and another one said that she has some physical therapy.
Okay, so I think that's going to be dependent on county by county, and also whoever is your caseworker, who's your agency that you're working with. You can find out from them. Your best bet is to try to be in contact with them. I know I've called DCF and on several occasions to ask about things, and the oversight is slim at the moment. So I would say, yes, those are needed services at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they're being put on hold. But the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so keep trying to get in touch with your caseworker and keep asking those questions. We need to do that.
We also had several call in and want to know if they feel that there is a problem that needs immediate help. Who are they going to turn to? Is it again the caseworker?
No, in that case, if you, because teachers are often mandated reporters, that's not happening, but neighbors, other family members, you can still report suspected child abuse, and those are still supposed to be investigated. Maybe at the end of the program, I can give you that phone number to call. It's a number that they are checking all the time still. It's DCF, and if you call the DCF office, there is a button that you push if you need to report suspected abuse. So that's one way to do it, but I'll try to get back with more information, and I can give it to someone who's presenting later. So
thank you so much.
Yeah,
we appreciate everything.
Thank
Susan.
you, and
Appreciate
happy
you being
Easter
here.
to you all. We do have much to celebrate, even in this season.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much. Well, a lot of information, a lot is going on besides the COVID-19, as you can see, and we need to stay updated on that and concerned. We can't just turn the spigot off and say everything's on hold. Much is on hold, but our legislator work does go on. So now we want to welcome to the stage Representative Michael Capps. He has been invaluable to us in putting this program on here today, and I know he has a lot to bring to us. Michael?
Good morning. Thank you, Alta. One of the things we talked about when we put this together is we wanted to stay away from the negativity of the virus, the negativity of the crisis that's around us, but it's a reality that we're living with each day. So one thing I just want to plug out there is that, you've got a handful of your legislators that are here today. Understand that part of the reason you only have a handful is due to social distancing and our efforts to try to, be mindful of health and welfare of all of us. But what I want to point out is that every one of your legislators throughout the county, throughout the state for that matter, they're hard at work. We're fielding questions, emails, phone calls from constituents all over the state looking for answers. Please, if you have a need, if it's food, unemployment, benefits, or just wanting the facts that maybe you're not getting through the media, reach out to us, let us know. We want to give you information. We're sharing it through social media. We're sharing it by phone. We're sharing it by email. We're sharing it however we can. Having said that, I do want to talk about a few different things that aren't COVID-19 related for a change. So we had a lot of great bills that came through the legislature this year. There were, a lot of things that didn't get done because unfortunately we had to get out of there, shut down and get home to, take care of our districts. Some of these are bills that hopefully either we get an opportunity to revisit still yet this session, while that may look a little doubtful. These are great ideas that will come forward in 2021, hopefully as well. In my case, one of them that I want to touch on was House Bill 2478. Some of you remember I spoke about this at a previous RWU meeting. This was the National Motto Act. It was a non-taxpayer funded requirement to place the national motto, the U.S. flag and the Kansas state flag, so in God we trust, and our flags, in all of our public buildings. It was a civic reminder of our national heritage and our national roots, and it was done purely through donations, nothing coming from the taxpayer. Got a lot of support, heard from literally hundreds of people throughout the area that were very supportive of this initiative because, most importantly, it didn't cost the taxpayers a dollar. In fact, that particular bill had a full hearing in Fed and State earlier this year. But again, current situation makes it difficult for us to move forward on it. Another one that we introduced was House Bill 2589. This was called the GAP Act, the Girls Athletic Protection Act. I want to point out before I get too far into it that Iowa actually already passed this bill this year. I was hopeful that Kansas would be part of that group, but I know Iowa did. This bill simply said, very simply, that boys and girls will participate in middle school and high school athletics based on their biological sex. Just that simple. And some people see this as an attack type of a piece. This really isn't. This is an equality piece. Our girls, whether they're in middle school or high school, they deserve to be able to compete on level playing field with other girls. The facts are, no matter what somebody identifies at, the difference between a boy and a girl is quite substantial, especially in adolescence when it comes to muscle mass and their competitiveness. In high school, you're talking about scholarships that are on the line. You're talking about people's future education and future ability to succeed in society is on the line of whether they can actually earn those scholarships that they're working very hard for. So the Girls Athletic Protection Act just simply said that. You'll participate in extracurricular sport activities at the middle school and high school level based on your biological sex. The other bill that we introduced, and I want to piggyback on what Representative Humpries had said earlier with DCF, a lot of us identified that there's issues with DCF that we need to be working towards common solutions to protect our children. And so House Bill 2590 that I introduced with the support of the Kansas Sheriff's Association would allow our law enforcement community, your detectives, those beat officers that are out on the streets, to have access to those DCF records. We've had a couple of deaths right here in Wichita just in the last year where law enforcement, unfortunately, their hands were tied. They didn't even know there was a child in the home. But yet DCF had known more than 20 times that there was a child in the home because they had case files open more than 20 times. So 2590 would allow law enforcement to be able to access those records, to know when there are children in the home, so they can do those welfare checks. It gives us an additional level of accountability, but more importantly, it gives us the ability to save lives. So those were three that I was really passionate about through the session, and hopefully we get a chance to revisit those when we go back. I also want to just touch real briefly on the budget. We passed what was called a bare bones budget. I can't speak for my colleagues when I say this, but it wasn't a bare bones budget to me. Even as a bare bones budget, it still spent more money than we did last year. And now with the crisis that's unfolding in front of us now, the shortfalls in revenue, the unemployment numbers going through the roof, I honestly don't know how we're going to fund this, folks. And I think the governor's going to have to give some pretty clear answers on how she's going to cut her administration back to account for the reduction in revenue coming to the state, because I certainly don't see us trying to pass that on to the backs of hardworking Kansas taxpayers. We may revisit the budget if we go back into session still this year. The other thing I want to touch real briefly on is the 2020 election. Quite frankly, we're dealing with a crisis right now, and none of us really want to talk about the elections, but they are going to be coming in November. One of the great things about Republican Women United, whether we're sitting in the same room together or like today where we're doing it virtually, is this is the type of organization at the grassroots level that helps us protect our rights and liberties by getting out and electing good Republicans to the office. Don't let this crisis make you think that we're not going to do that again this year. It's going to be different. We won't be doing quite as much door knocking, obviously. A lot more phone calls, a lot more social media, a lot more reaching out one-on-one to convey the message. But we're still going to get the Republican message out there, and I'm very confident it's going to be the hardworking women here in the Republican Women United that will do that. Alta, you put your hand up. Such a nice thing.
We have a couple of questions coming in about the budget.
Uh-huh.
If you do not go back into session, how will the budget be determined? Will the governor have free reign to administer the budget any way she wants to?
So I start with the freshman preface. The freshman's in front of the camera right now. So my senior representatives that are in the room, if I misspeak, please start waving your hands up there so I know that I've done something wrong. As I understand it, we have passed a budget. Again, they call it a bare bones budget. I don't see it as a bare bones budget. That is the budget that covers us for the rest of this year as well as going into 2021. We have something in April called the consensus revenue estimates. This is basically where the smart money number of people get together and they say, this is how much money we're going to get for the rest of the year. We haven't seen those numbers yet, but I think anybody with common sense is going to come to the conclusion those numbers are going to be down. They're going to be down a lot. That's going to create a budget shortfall. Unlike the federal government, we don't have a money printing press. I'm also glad that we don't. We're required to have a balanced budget in Kansas. So one of two things happens. If we go back into session in late April, in May, or whenever, if the budget consensus numbers are low, we have two choices. Cut the budget, raise taxes. Quite frankly, I don't like either one of those. But this was the governor's budget. That's an important thing. This was her budget she put forth to us. If we don't go back into session, it's called allotting. This is where the governor has to strike the items out of her budget to balance it. I like that idea better.
We have several asking if there's any hope that we're going to get the tax on groceries reduced.
So the question was about tax on groceries reduced. This comes up each time, and I can tell you what, I've been fighting very hard for it. I even had a farmer's market sales tax exemption bill that I put in with a lot of bipartisan support. But folks, I'm just going to be honest. Given the current budget crisis, I don't expect anything to be happening with tax cuts this year. As much as every colleague of mine in this room, we want them and we support them. But we're talking about 33,000 people in just the last 4 weeks in Sedgwick County have filed for unemployment. That's not counting the people that can't get through the system. That's going to be a hit to our economy. And unfortunately, facts are the facts. Right now, we just got to focus on how do we balance the budget. And I'd like the governor to do that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy your Easter.
All right. Well, I hope you're enjoying so far what we have presented to you in this new format. Up next, we have Representative Renee Erickson, and she has a lot of wonderful things to tell us. I think she's also going to touch on the Supreme Court hearing that's going on now. I do want to remind you that this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube later. I also have gotten a nod from Representative Delperdang, and he has a few more things he wants to say, so we will welcome him up later. Thank you, Renee.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. And I promise to keep mine brief. I want to thank Republican Women United for putting this on. And it's a different format. We're used to having some great food and great conversation. So this is a little different, but I'm so glad that you all are here and to have this opportunity to let you know what all happened during the legislative session and where we're at now and where we anticipate going forward. So the old adage, saving the best for last, does not hold true in this case. So I just want to preface that. My colleagues have done a wonderful job of sharing some very important information with you. I will remind you that I am on the Fed and State Affairs Committee and Education and K-12 Budget. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened on the education front and what is happening now that the governor has shut down schools. So let me start with a little bit about the policy that happened in both of the education committees on the House side. The main thing that I want to talk about is House Bill 2465. That is an extension of the tax credit scholarship program for low-income students that was first initiated in 2015. Since that time, we've had almost 1,500 students be able to take advantage of these scholarships. And they're very important because they give educational opportunities and options for parents who may not otherwise be able to afford those options. So it's been a successful program. We wanted to expand that, and we did that by making 2 proposed changes. The first one is to redefine an eligible student as not just one receiving free lunch status, but if they are free or reduced lunch, they would be eligible for the tax credit scholarship. The other thing was to define what a qualified school is. Previously, it was the 100 lowest performing public schools. Then it was amended to the lowest 100 elementary schools. But 2465 would remove that and say that it's any school that is being operated under a unified school district under the authority of the Kansas State Department of Education. So that would mean any public school these students would be eligible for, and also that there are qualified private schools as long as they're accredited through the state. So that was a big policy that we were pushing for. It made it out of the K-12 budget committee. Unfortunately, with the timing of everything going on, as Representative Capps mentioned, the budget and passing a budget then superseded all of the other great policy that we have been working diligently on throughout this session. So that's the main policy part. I would like to talk a little bit about what is happening in education since the governor closed down schools in the middle of March. When that occurred, the Kansas State Department of Education put together a team of educators to come up with guidelines for what we are calling continual learning. So every school district in the state must submit a plan to the Kansas State Department of Education showing how they are providing continual learning opportunities for students at home. So parents, if you are at home with your school-age children and going, what am I supposed to do with my kids? There is guidelines for you. Now, those should come through your local school district. What each individual school district is choosing to do is different and unique. But there is state guidelines that should be adhered to. Those plans, those continual learning plans, were due at the Kansas State Department of Education on April 8th. They should be posted so that you can see what your school district's expectation is for students during this time. The critical thing I want to share with you is, and that we have been asking the Commissioner of Education, is how do we know students are making academic progress during this time that schools are not in session? And the answer to that is that assurance is to be included in those continual learning plans that were submitted to KSDE. So I would encourage you to go to ksde.org or your local school district and look at what those plans are. The other thing I'll touch on real quick is an issue coming up in Federal and State Affairs Committee. That is a fascinating committee. We get to discuss everything. The Value Them Both hearing came through that committee. We do everything from naming an official state dance to vaccinations. But the one thing that has been on that plate that I think we'll probably see in Kansas is sports wagering. I was on the subcommittee for that to explore what that looks like. There's a Senate version that basically has the casinos, the 4 state-owned and operated casinos doing the sports wagering. The House version includes the lottery and their nearly 1,200 retail outlets, including sports bars, convenience stores, having a part in that as well. The one thing that's common in that is there is an online component, whether we're looking at the Senate or House version of that. The Senate passed their version. The House did not take up a vote. Again, that's where it kind of stands due to us adjourning and just kind of being on hold right now. So I'll look to Alta, see if we have any questions
Oh,
yet.
we sure do.
Okay,
Have a question.
great. What do we have?
Right. We have some, first of all, concerning the children who are at home. What provisions have been made for those who have parents who are not engaged to help the children with their homework? And what are we doing about those that do not have access to computers?
Okay, the question centered around what about those children who are at home and their parents aren't engaged in their education? And what about those who don't have access to resources, namely predominantly online resources for their learning? That is going to vary by school district. So in Wichita, I know one of the things they're doing for high school students, which are doing, and I think it's prioritized maybe by seniors, if they don't have access to a computer or internet, they are trying to get those resources out to students. So it will depend on your school district. If you are struggling with resources, please reach out to them. I know that teachers are working hard. Teachers are working very hard to make sure that their students have those. But if you're struggling, please reach out to your local school district and make sure and advocate for your children. As far as those whose parents aren't engaged, this is not unique to them, sadly, being at home. As a former principal, I know we struggled with parent engagement even when school was in session. So I would encourage, if that's the case, we know we have dedicated teachers who are going to help those students make up that lost groundwork. Grandparents, just because you're not don't have a teacher certification, read to your children. If there's one thing I would tell you to do, read to your children and grandchildren. That's the one thing I think that we can focus on that will help more than anything. So that would be my answer to that. Yes.
All right. We actually have several, since you mentioned the official state dance.
Yes.
Was that ever decided on?
By golly, we got that done. We did get the official state dance done. Now I'm going to look to my fellow legislators too. Well, there was a hotly contested debate and even a threatened dance-off in Fed and State Affairs Committee between square dancing and polka. So the compromise we came to was that both the polka and square dancing are official state dances, and many states have more than one official state dance. So both of those are official state dances. So it passed through the House. I don't know if it went through.
We pulled it.
Oh, we pulled it. I'm so sorry.
Last minute.
We pulled that. I'm sorry. It did go out of Fed and State Committee. It did not come out of the House floor. So anyway, I think that that's probably a not so controversial bill that will probably make it through, but that's where it stands. I'm sorry, it was pulled at the last minute, but it did pass out of committee. So,
All right.
yes.
We have a couple of questions about sports wagering.
Okay.
We have a couple who want to know, are we going to bring dog racing back here in Wichita? And a couple want to know, are we going to have horse racing? I'm not sure that sports and horse and dogs go together.
Well, they are tied together. Okay, the question is about dog and horse racing tied to sports wagering. They do go together with the way that our statutes are written. That is still being debated. That still has to be determined. So stay tuned for that. There are passionate arguments on both sides of that issue. I do know here in Sedgwick County, there is a push to take up another vote as it relates to the dog racing, and we'll see where that goes as well. So those are still to be determined, but they are being talked about and they are being considered as important issues. So thank you for those questions. I would just like to end my time quickly by saying I am so proud of Kansans, and we are strong and resilient. We will get through this crisis, not because government is providing for us, but because of who we are, how we look out and care for each other. So God bless. And on this Easter weekend, please take care of yourself and be healthy. And thanks again for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Renee. That was fabulous. I always enjoy hearing all my legislators give us updates. Leo Delperdang is going to join us at the podium. He has some things. Oh, I'm sorry. We've switched it up now. Susan Humpries is going to join us now, and I believe she's going to give us a little update on what's happening in the Supreme Court hearing that's been going on now. Susan, please.
I just quickly want to address, this is off the cuff too, I want to address what happened this week. with the governor's executive order number 18. Number 18 took the exemption away for churches to be able to meet. Now, there's exemptions for libraries, of course, shopping. Like you can imagine at Dillon's, you know, there's lines, there's people next to each other. Airports, even bars and restaurants have an exemption. Well, now churches don't have that exemption. So the Legislative Coordinating Council said that executive order was unconstitutional because by taking that exemption away, it took those gatherings for religious purposes to a whole new realm of it's now a Class A misdemeanor if you were to meet. So the Legislative Coordinating Council said that's just a step too far. These other places have exemptions and they're doing it the right way with social distancing. Churches can also do it the right way. And we know churches all over the state and the country are. They're doing their churches online. They're having it in a parking lot, in enclosed cars. So there's a lot of confusion. And I feel like what it boils down to is weighing the balance between health and safety of utmost importance. We all agree on that. On the other side, it's protecting our constitutional rights and not making it, not criminalizing going to church. So that's why the Legislative Coordinating Council took a stand. The governor didn't like it. She sued the Legislative Coordinating Council. There's been a court hearing this morning about that. And there should be a decision really within the next few hours from the Kansas Supreme Court. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion. The bottom line is we all believe it's better people don't congregate in places. Do social distancing, worship, celebrate Easter, do it like they did back in the 1st century, which was in their homes and probably not in huge gatherings. So yes, both are important, but support those. That Legislative Coordinating Council is getting all kinds of flack and it's being very misunderstood what's going on. We do care about it, and I think Leo is going to speak to that now. Thank you.
You bet. I think Leo has just a few closing remarks that he wants to make, and then Michael Capps will be wrapping up his presentation. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you for sharing. I see a lot of watch parties have started. Don't forget, we are recording this and it will be on YouTube later. Thank you.
Thank you, Alta. And again, it's been great to be here. I wanted to ask everybody out there listening to please do something for us. Okay, I was told to speak a little bit louder. I'm asking everyone out there listening, please reach out to your legislative leaders, either today, tomorrow, but this weekend. I would include the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, the majority leaders of both the House and the Senate, and the Speaker Pro Tem. Please let them know that you support them. They need to hear it. We as legislators have received many, many calls and letters this past week, but the legislative leadership, they are getting blasted. I think they have been overwhelmed. They have put in some seriously long hours trying to work through these issues. So again, please let them know you are out there and you do support them. And with that, I'd like to also let everybody know, this is more with a heavy heart. Many of you know our Representative Les Mason. His wife, Kayla Mason, passed away yesterday. She's been fighting a long battle with cancer, and that battle has now come to an end. She passed away at home, surrounded by Les and her family. And we are all family. When we lose one of our own, it's always a shock. So Les has got more going on his plate than just the politics. And again, if you would be so kind as to maybe drop a letter or a line or a card to him, it would be very much appreciated. With that, thank you again for having us here. And until next time.
Thanks, Leo. Yeah, when we got the message about Representative Mason and his wife last night, I sat in front of the computer trying to think what the words were that I wanted to share, and there just weren't words. So Representative Delperdang puts it very well there. Despite the circumstances that we live in right now, life has to move forward. Albeit it's a little bit different than we normally anticipate it being, it does still have to move forward. Republican Women United have always been there to support the Republicans in the legislature as well as the local officials. We're very thankful for that. I can't tell you how important your all's involvement is. I got a couple of colleagues here in the room with me, Representative Erickson and Representative Delperdang, along with 3 of my other colleagues. We're trying to get funding for critical community functions, the Red Cross, the food bank, the Meals on Wheels, and Convoy of Hope. We're working. None of us expected this to be what we were signing up for, but we're honored and privileged to be able to truly serve on the ground day in and day out. It's an honor for us, though they are some long days, 10 to 12-hour days. What I want to leave you with before Alta comes up and actually closes us out for the day, if you or anybody you know, if they're in need of anything, reach out to your legislator. Reach out to me, my staff, any of our representatives, whether it's Leo, Susan, Renee, the whole myriad of delegation that we have here. We want to help. We know a lot of the right resources, and if we don't know the resource, we're going to go find the answer for you, because that's what you elected us to do, was to serve you. Whether we go back into session this year or not, I don't know the answer to that. What's going to happen with the Supreme Court ruling today? I don't know the answer to that one yet either. I'm going to find out as quickly as you do, and then stay tuned, because we're going to try to convey what our next steps are going to be so that we can continue to rebuild Kansan, shoulder to shoulder, Kansan to Kansan, for a better future tomorrow. This isn't the end. This is just the start of a greater time. Thank you so much for the first ever virtual. Alta, you going to close us out, ma'am?
I do.
Thank
you
you
so much. Yes, I do want to say thank you again for watching. Thank you for everyone here who came to help. We have practiced social distancing, so if it seemed a little awkward as we went from the podium to our chairs, that's because we're wanting to do things right. This concludes the first ever live presentation of Republican Women United. I do want you to know that because we don't know what the situation is going to be on banning of groups of 10 or more, we do plan to meet again, this very same format, Saturday, May 9th, 10 a.m. with a live program from Republican Women United. Several things are going to be on the meeting program there. One, we will be hearing from Tabitha Lehman, Sedgwick County's election commissioner. She's going to bring us up to date on anything that has changed with how our elections are going to be held. We are also going to have legislators come again and talk to us about what has happened if our legislators went back to session, and if they did not, how things are going to change. So I look forward to seeing you Saturday, May 9th. Remember, you can send us an email at republicanwomenunited@cox.net, and we will answer your questions. I hope I get a lot of those about how to join us. Thank you so much, and until next time, practice social distancing. Thank you.